cactus and succulent growers, welcome to Desert Plants of Avalon in the north of Ireland. And in today's video I'm going to be talking about the 5 reasons why your cactus dies after repotting. People say to me, Lynn, I repotted a cactus and it's now dying. And sometimes this can happen, especially if you're new to growing cacti. There's a few little repotting mistakes that I'm going to cover here, the 5 most common ones. And the first one will be watering your cactus straight after repotting. Now, I do know there are some growers that do water straight after repotting. They're very careful when they're repotting. Personally, myself, I would always wait at least 10 days to 2 weeks before I water a cactus after I've repotted it. And the reason for that is that when you repot a cactus, it's almost inevitable that you're going to have some slight damage. Not necessarily drastic damage, but some damage to the roots when you repot. The plant is being moved from its pot it was in, especially if it was very root bound. You have to tease the roots away at the bottom and then you pot it up in the new soil. If you go to water straight away, some of these roots that have died back or have got damaged can cause root rot and also cause basal rot. And I learnt this myself the hard way as a child getting into cacti when I was 12 years old, and I didn't really know about not watering straight after repotting, and I lost some cacti this way. So if you're repotting a cactus, to be on the safe side, do allow 10 days to 2 weeks just to allow any roots that have got slightly damaged at all in the process of repotting just to heal over before watering again. And this is something I always say in my videos when I do my repotting videos, so bear that in mind. Even if it's the middle of summer and the plant has desperate to be repotted, just allow, it's a cactus so it's not going to die, just allow 10 days to 2 weeks before starting to water again. Now, number 2, the most common reason is the wrong type of soil. Cacti, especially the desert types of cacti, do need a very well draining gritty cactus soil such as this here, lots of grit and often sand and a very good well draining soil. I always like to make up my own mix, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. And you can't just use normal houseplant soil. Maybe with some of the epiphytic cacti such as the Christmas and Thanksgiving holiday cacti and the ripsalis and other types of epiphytums. You can sometimes get away with using houseplant soil if you put a bit of added perlite or pumice or grit into it. But with the desert types of cacti, such as all of these here, do not use normal houseplant soil because it is too moisture retentive for cacti. They need a very well draining gritty cactus mix. And when I say gritty, I mean it is a very well draining mix. Now, I like to make up my own cactus soil because I like to know what's going into it. I've bought cactus pre-commercial cactus soil in the past years ago, and it's been awful quality, you know, high in peat, which is moisture retaining, and even with wetting agents added to them, which you don't want with cacti. I use John Innes number 2 or number 3 when I use, which is a loam based soil. It sometimes has a wee bit of peat added to the mix. I use a brand by Clover, which I'm really happy with, and it's actually made here in Ireland as well. Very good brand, and it's good quality, and it's high in loam, which you want, a loam based soil. And then I mix it with 3 equal parts. So I use loam, then I use grit, horticultural sharp grit, and I'll use horticultural sharp sand. Now, if I don't have sand, I'll sometimes use pumice or I'll use perlite if I can't get hold of either. But the most important thing, it is well draining. Everyone has their own preferred mixes and there's no right or wrong. I know many cactus growers. It also depends where you're living in the world as well. And they all have their own special mixes. So the most important thing is that you use a very well draining cactus and succulent mix, and do not use normal houseplant or even garden soil or things like that. And if you want to know how I make cactus soil, then I'll link up above to a video on how I make cactus and also succulent soil in 3 easy steps. Do watch that video, and you'll see how easy it is to make your own cactus soil, and it's also far more economical too. So rule number 2, make sure you use a cactus and succulent soil, especially for cactus, a well draining gritty soil. Now, mistake number 3 will be potting up in too big of a pot. For example, this big size pot here, to pot up this parodia into this size up. And this is also a mistake that I did when I first got growing cacti as a 12-year-old. I got so excited about cacti, and I filled all of the windowsills at my poor mother and father's house, and I just thought I want them to grow as big as possible. I was this young little kid, and I potted up many cacti into huge pots. Stupidly, I used the cactus soil from the garden centres, so I was doing everything right, and I made the mistake of thinking that a bigger pot would make them grow quicker. But the thing is with that is that if there's too much soil around the root ball, then even if you're using a very well gritty cactus soil, which of course I've mentioned you should be doing, and you go to water, yeah, it's going to still stay wet, however well draining. Even if you use pure grit, it's going to stay far too long wet around the roots if there's excess soil in the pot. So I also lost plants that way growing up. So I learned now that I've always pot up just one size up. And you may say, well, and these people often say this to me in my repotting videos, how come then, Lynn, in their native habitats, cacti grow in huge, big areas, and their roots grow all over the place? They're not in little pots and they don't rot. The difference is in their natural habitats. They're used to that particular soil. And remember, their natural habitats, they have fresh air, and they often have completely different environment. They have plenty of sunshine, they have heavy rainfall, then they won't have rain then for many weeks, and that is why they will dry out quick. Cacti in the desert environment, for example, planted outside, can have heavy rainfall, but they won't stay in soggy wet soil that they're growing in for long. In a pot environment, even with a clay pot which dries out quicker, they're still going to stay too wet in the soil if you pot them up too large. So just go up one size pot up, and I always do mention this in my videos. I learnt the hard way, so hopefully you if you're new to cacti, you'll learn too. And just always go up one. Sometimes you're okay going up 2 sizes up, but what I mean to say is do not go into a pot size too large, because you're better to underpot rather than overpot. Now, number 4 will be potting a cactus up that has no drainage holes in the bottom of the pot. And drainage holes such as this is an absolute must for cacti, because if you're potting up a cactus and it has no drainage holes at the bottom and you go to water it, it doesn't matter how well draining the soil is or how the right size pot it is for that cactus, the soil is going to stay damp, or certainly stay damp for way too long. And this is a shame. You'll often see cacti for sale in a lot of the garden shops that are planted up in very beautiful pots, often beautiful ceramic pots, and you lift them up and the pot has no holes in the bottom of it. And this is a disaster, because if you're new to growing cactus and you don't know, and you bring it home and you water it, it's almost indefinitely, it's a short matter of time before the cactus will rot, because they need, as I mentioned, not only just the soil has to be very well draining, the water has to drain out. So it's no good even if a cactus is potted up in pure grit and you go to water, the water's going to stay at the bottom of that pot, and it's going to cause too much humidity and moisture around them roots, and it's going to cause them roots to rot, and you're going to lose the cactus. So make sure that whatever pot you're using, it always has drainage holes. The last one would be, it's been too rough when you're repotting. Now, it sometimes, and I can be a bit guilty of this, if I have a lot of cacti to repot, I think, I have to get all this done, and it's get it out of the pot, quickly loosen up the roots, put it back in again. Take your time when you're repotting a cactus, because if you're really rushing and you're repotting, you're trying to get rough all the soil off them roots, and a lot of the roots come away and they get damaged, and then you pot it up again. Even if you're leaving it for 2 weeks, sometimes a cactus can still rot in that way. So you want to be very, very careful when you're repotting. When I do my repottings and my repotting videos, I'm always very careful when I'm handling the roots, as I often show you. And I like to actually, the less I have to handle the roots, the better. But often you do have to loosen up the roots at the bottom. And if you're bought a new cactus and it's potted up in that dreadful peat soil, which they nearly always are, I like to remove as much of that soil as I can. So if that's the case, I sometimes remove as much of the soil off it as I can. And sometimes you have to prune the roots back and do a drastic pruning if you cannot get that horrible peat off the roots. And then I'd recommend leaving the cactus unpotted for about 2 weeks before potting it up again. But that's a whole separate video entirely. So just be very careful when you're handling the roots. Now, saying that, and this is something I don't really have that much experience of, I have seen some YouTube videos of growers, especially with astrophytums, that cut the roots completely back to the bottom and pot them up, and they grow amazing. Now, I've not had no experience of that, so I can't talk about that. I have, however, had to do drastic root pruning on some of my cacti in the past. I think I've made a couple of videos on this, where the roots have died back and I've had to cut them back, and then I've left the cactus unpotted for a week or so and then potted it up and treated it as a cutting, and they've come back brilliantly, sometimes growing better. So if you've got experience of actually pruning roots back drastically and you had great success, do let me know in the comments down below. But I prefer, to handle the roots, have to disturb the roots as less as possible, unless I have to cut them back. With cacti anyway. Funny enough, with aloes, gasterias, haworthias, I'm the opposite. When I repot these, I always cut the roots right back, because they sort of lose their older roots and grow new ones anyway. But that's completely different. They're just purely succulent, and that's a different thing again. I've made a whole video entirely on repotting gasterias, aloes, haworthias, and how I cut the roots back and everything like that. So do check that video out if you want to know more about that. But with the cacti, I like to disturb them as little as possible, I should say. And being too rough and too drastic and just like damaging all the roots can cause danger for your cactus after you've repotted it. So I hope you enjoyed that little video on the 5 reasons why your cactus dies after repotting, and hopefully none of you will experience any cacti dying after repotting. But if that has happened to you, do let me know in the comments down below, and also do let me know if you've made any of them 5 mistakes that I've mentioned. And as I say, I've made them mistakes in the past, and that's why I'm sharing them here. So if you agree or disagree with me, please do leave the comments down below. And also thank you all so much for your awesome comments and support on my channel, and also to all my new subscribers and long-standing subscribers as well. I know some of you have been here on my channel a very, very long time, and I appreciate every single one of you and every single comment. So thank you all so much. If you haven't done already, then do please subscribe and click that notification bell. Do follow me on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook at Desert Plants of Avalon, and check my website out for regular blogs and articles on what I'm up to and how to care for many different types of cacti and succulents. desertplantsofavalon.com. I want to wish you all a fantastic cactus powered day.